Welcome back, viewers, to the latest researches and news. Currently, we have three developments about the ongoing conflict. Firstly, about Ethiopia's own ambassador to Somalia has confirmed that Eritrean troops with heavy weapons have entered Ethiopian territory. He is accusing Eritrea of fighting on the side of the Raya war. Secondly, about the reports from local reporters on the ground claim that Amhara and Tigray coalition forces have abandoned their combat vehicles and are advancing on foot toward Addis Ababa. We explain this claim carefully, what it would mean if accurate. And in last, about the Tigray People's Liberation Front has issued a formal call to Tigrayan fighters who are part of armed groups opposing the Tigray People's Liberation Front, including the Tigray Peace Force, to return to their communities. Let us begin with the most significant diplomatic and military admission of this phase of the conflict. The Ethiopian ambassador to Somalia, an official of the Ethiopian federal government, has publicly stated that Eritrean troops with heavy weapons have crossed into Ethiopia and entered the country's border. He has directly accused Eritrea of fighting on the side of the forces engaged in the Raya war. This statement carries a weight that no other source could provide. Throughout this conflict, the Ethiopian federal government has been careful about publicly naming Eritrea's military involvement. It has used language that implies foreign interference ambassador Baka Debele spoke of Eritrea pushing the Tigray People's Liberation Front, but avoided the explicit formal confirmation that Eritrean military units were physically operating on Ethiopian soil in active combat. That restraint has now been broken. An Ethiopian government ambassador has said it plainly: Eritrean troops with heavy weapons are in Ethiopia. They are on the side of the Raya war. Let us understand what this means in its full context. We have been documenting the Semido Alliance, the strategic framework between the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the Tigray Defense Forces, and Eritrea's government across many videos. We documented Eritrean military commanders publicly entering Tigray at Zalambesa and raising Eritrean flags. We documented reports of Eritrean tanks and heavy weapons moving toward areas of northern Ethiopia, where the Tigray People's Liberation Front is strongest. We documented military coordination meetings between Eritrean army generals and Tigray People's Liberation Front leadership broadcast on Tigray television. The Ethiopian government's own ambassador has now confirmed the next step. Those troops and those weapons have moved beyond Tigray and are actively involved in the Raya war. The Raya Kobo Alamata Front, which we have been tracking for over a week, is not simply a confrontation between the Ethiopian National Defense Force and the Tigray Defense Forces. According to Ethiopia's own official, it now includes Eritrean military personnel fighting alongside Tigray Defense Forces. This changes the conflict's legal and diplomatic status. A war between an Ethiopian government and an armed regional group is a domestic matter, however devastating. A war in which Eritrean troops are actively fighting on Ethiopian soil introduces questions of state-to-state conflict, international law of armed conflict between nations, and the potential for formal diplomatic consequences that do not arise in purely internal conflicts. The Ethiopian government itself has opened this door by having its own ambassador make this statement publicly. Whether this leads to a formal diplomatic break, an international escalation, or remains at the level of ground fighting without formal state-level declarations will be watched closely in the coming hours and days. Now to a claim that we must handle with complete transparency, because it is the most dramatic ground movement report we have received. Reports from local reporters on the ground state that Amhara and Tigray coalition, forces the combined force of the Amhara Fano National Movement and Tigray Defense Forces operating together, have abandoned their combat vehicles and are advancing on foot toward the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. We want to be completely clear with you about the status of this climb. This is coming from local reporters on the ground. It is not yet confirmed by multiple independent sources. It has not been confirmed by the Amhara Fano National Movement or the Tigray People's Liberation Front through official statements. And it has not been confirmed or denied by the Ethiopian federal government. We are reporting it because the source local reporters with ground access carries credibility that we cannot dismiss. Let us explain what this claim would mean if accurate, because the framing of advancing toward Addis Ababa on foot after abandoning vehicles requires explanation. When military forces abandon vehicles and advance on foot, it typically indicates one of two things. First, they may be moving through terrain where vehicles cannot easily operate dense urban approaches, mountainous areas, or zones where vehicle movement would expose them to airstrikes. Troops advancing on foot in such terrain are more dispersed, harder to target from the air, and can move through narrow passages that vehicles cannot. Second, the abandonment of vehicles may reflect a tactical choice to reduce their visual and thermal signature vehicles are detectable by surveillance drones and airborne observation assets, while individual fighters on foot in covered terrain are significantly harder to track. If Amhara and Tigray coalition forces are genuinely advancing on foot toward Addis Ababa, this would represent the most significant territorial advance of this conflict, and would indicate that the front lines have moved far further south than any previous reporting has confirmed. We must also acknowledge that this claim, if exaggerated or inaccurate, could represent either an optimistic report from resistance-aligned sources or a deliberate information operation. We have been consistent throughout this conflict about the importance of distinguishing confirmed movements from claimed movements. What we can tell you, we are actively working to verify this claim from multiple ground sources and independent contacts. We will share confirmed information the moment it is available. If this report is confirmed, it will be the biggest development in this conflict to date. If it is not confirmed, we will tell you that too. We ask you, our viewers, with contacts on the ground, if you have any information about movements in the direction of Addis Ababa, please share in the comments. Community intelligence has helped us before. Now to a statement from the Tigray People's Liberation Front that carries both a humanitarian message and a strategic signal. The Tigray People's Liberation Front has issued a formal public call to Tigrayan fighters who are currently part of armed groups opposing the Tigray People's Liberation Front, specifically directed at members of the Tigray Peace Force and similar formations to abandon that path and return to their communities. The Tigray People's Liberation Front described their participation in groups opposing the Tigray People's Liberation Front as a historic mistake. It called on these fighters to benefit from a formal decision taken by the Tigray government measures designed to allow their return to normal life within the community. Let us explain what the Tigray Peace Force is and why this call is significant. The Tigray Peace Force is an armed group made up of Tigrayan fighters who chose to align with the Ethiopian federal government rather than the Tigray People's Liberation Front. They operate in areas where the Ethiopian government deploys them alongside the Ethiopian National Defense Force in places like Rayakobo to give the federal side a Tigrayan face in its military operations against the Tigray People's Liberation Front. The Tigray People's Liberation Front has simultaneously accused the Ethiopian federal government of actively supporting these armed groups operating inside Tigray, with the stated goal of weakening the Tigray People's Liberation Front politically and militarily by creating internal division. The call to return is not purely humanitarian. It is also a strategic message. By offering defectors a path back without punishment publicly, formally, through an official government decision, the Tigray People's Liberation Front is attempting to accelerate the disintegration of armed groups it sees as instruments of the federal government's campaign against Tigray. We have reported previously on this trend most recently, when 17 fighters from the Tigray Peace Force crossed back into Tigray through Tplf and rejoined the Tigray Defense Forces. That return was publicly celebrated by the Tigray government and used as a call for others to follow. This new formal statement is the institutionalization of that call, a structured amnesty-like offer rather than individual case-by-case returns. But the Tigray People's Liberation Front's statement also contains a warning. It explicitly warned of preparations for a new round of confrontations. It framed the return offer as a final opportunity before fighting intensifies to a level where those who chose the wrong side would face losses and legal and moral responsibilities for the consequences. This combination offer of return alongside warning of escalation is a message designed to do two things simultaneously: reduce the ranks of forces opposing the Tigray People's Liberation Front from within Tigray, and signal to those who do not accept the offer that the coming phase of the conflict will be more costly than anything they have experienced so far. 3 updates today, each one a different dimension of the same escalating conflict. Ethiopia's own ambassador to Somalia has confirmed Eritrean troops with heavy weapons have entered Ethiopia and are fighting on the Raya front. The Semido Alliance's military dimension is now officially acknowledged by an Ethiopian government official. The conflict is no longer purely internal. Coalition forces Amhara Fano National Movement and Tigray Defense Forces together are reported by local reporters on the ground to be advancing on foot toward Addis Ababa after abandoning combat vehicles. This is the most significant territorial advance claim we have received. We are actively verifying it and will update you the moment we have confirmation. And the Tigray People's Liberation Front has formally called on Tigrayan fighters in opposing armed groups to come home, calling their path a historic mistake and offering structured return measures, while simultaneously warning of a new and more intense phase of confrontation for those who do not. The Eritrean military is in. The coalition is reported to be moving. And the Tigray People's Liberation Front is preparing for whatever comes next. We will be here with every confirmed update as it emerges. Like, share, and subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a single development.